Good evening slash morning, everyone. Welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the second go at SpaceX's attempt to launch the Starlink 10-23 mission. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us as we are now just a hair under 1 hour away from the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket that you see here live on your screen. And I am going to take that back as SpaceX has adjusted the T0 time. Now looking at a departure for this Falcon 9 at 1:58 a.m. Eastern. 1:58 a.m., so an adjustment of roughly 30 minutes from where we were situated just a moment or two ago. Hope you've all had a wonderful weekend so far. For those of you who are back with us again in the early morning hours here on the East Coast or late night for other parts of the country, appreciate you popping back over here with us live as we're currently now T-minus 1 hour, 27 minutes, 56 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. I want to thank the little more than 500 now of you that are with us here. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button. Share the stream, allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. I want to thank our moderators who are back in action with us tonight as well. So thanks to Astro Joe, Callistia Lee, and I'm scrolling to see if any of the other mods are with us at this point of the broadcast. Not seeing any, but if you do see the other mods cruise on in during the count, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. Also want to give a tip of the cap to Cumulus Granatus, who's here in the chat as well, providing some facts and figures and answering questions for folks about this mission and other happenings regarding spaceflight. As we're getting rolling here with our live coverage, want to thank our channel member community who make these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like Cumulus Granatus, Butterfly, Glenn A., Diane Thomas. So we've got Rich Plain here this evening, however you want to think about it at this midnight hour, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. That's a little bit of housekeeping here for us as we're getting things rolling. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space and space flight, you'd like to have your comment elevated for discussion, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. We've got most of the crew out and about today as we're now less than 1 hour and 24 minutes away from the planned liftoff of this rocket. Radham Bernstein has been out and about getting the cameras set up around the press lawn, making sure they're sharp in focus and protected from any gusts of winds that may have some interfering thoughts about blowing over our camera tripods. Never a good sign. John Pisani running the technical operations of the broadcast today alongside our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. Michael Caine has this launch off, but he'll be back in action for the next flight that we've got, which is just around the corner. Coming up after this, we have the launch of an Atlas V rocket back on deck after standing down for a week to address an issue connected to the gaseous nitrogen purge line related to the Atlas V booster. We'll talk much more about the Atlas V launch and the Kuiper 2 mission, though, during that dedicated live stream, but just know that is coming up right around the corner in a little less than 5 hours from now is when that launch window opens. All that being said, if you're not following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles here. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. Adam is at Aburn NYC. John Pisani is at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. If you are not on X, you can also find us on Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky. Talking weather with a little less than an hour and 22 minutes left on the clock as things currently stand. The 45th Weather Squadron issued a forecast suggesting a 90% chance of favorable weather during this 4-hour launch opportunity, of which SpaceX has, of course, just eaten up half an hour of that. Cumulus clouds were the primary concern that could possibly interfere with today's launch, although the meteorologists did note that, and I'll just quote them here, there was a, quote, highest concentration of afternoon and evening storms across the middle and western portions of the Florida Peninsula over the next several days, with only widely scattered showers and storms each afternoon near the East Coast, end quote. They did also note that there were possibility for a few showers and storms that may move onshore during the late night and early morning hours. And just taking a quick peek at the radar, that has come to pass. This launch is heading in a northeasterly trajectory, and there's a number of pop-up cells that are racing towards us here with the system moving in a northwesterly direction, so kind of running right up into the Ascent corridor for this mission. So if this was a part of Group 12 for the Starlink constellation, we probably wouldn't have too much to worry. Well, I say that. Just looking a little bit south at the radar, there's storms to the south, closer to the southern tip of the Florida Peninsula. Talking like Fort Lauderdale area, just to the east of that. A little bit north of Miami. So, really, whether it was going to the north or going to the south, there's a number of scattered storms that are just hanging on right off the coast of Florida at this point in time. And until those clear, depending on how concentrated they are at the point that SpaceX is planning to launch, this may cause some impacts to the launch timeline. So, of course, we'll keep you apprised of any further delays to this mission. All that being said, SpaceX didn't outwardly state a reason for the launch delay, but of course we are keeping an eye on the weather as a potential factor in all this equation. For those of you who may just be joining us now, as we're 12:50 a.m. Eastern Time, currently T-minus 1 hour, 8 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. SpaceX did adjust the T0 for tonight's launch of the Starlink 10-23 mission, looking at a departure time of 1:58 a.m. Eastern, 1:58 a.m. Eastern, 05:58 UTC for our friends joining around the world. Now, SpaceX does have a roughly 4-hour launch window for this Starlink mission, which extends out until 5:47 a.m. Eastern, or 9:09:47 UTC. That's as long as they have not begun fueling their Falcon 9 rocket. They are seen there alive at Pad 40, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That little bit of venting you're seeing right now, though, is typically a good indication, though, at this point in the count, that we're approaching the 1-hour mark of planned T0. So while not definitive, take it to the bank, 100% count on it, that we are going to see a launch at 1:58 a.m. Eastern is certainly a good leading indicator. Of course, even when they have fueled their Falcon 9 rocket, that is not a guarantee that we'll get to launch. As those who are with us now about 24 hours ago are very keenly aware. For those who were not with us for the last launch attempt, SpaceX got down within the 2-hour time frame. Had fully fueled their Falcon 9 rocket, had gotten through the ground gas closeouts when they made the call that they were going to be scrubbing the mission. And that was due to, as the launch director at the time noted, a weak signal coming from the FTS, the flight termination system on the rocket. That caused the mission to scrub and bring us to today, where teams have presumably fixed that issue with the FTS signal and are now in a position where they can hopefully send this Falcon 9 on its way to deliver 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites to low Earth orbit. Taking a look at our live chat, want to thank channel member and moderator Callistia Lee for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity in helping to grow our channel member community here on YouTube. So to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month that you were just gifted. As we are once again closing in on the 1-hour marker here for the Starlink 10-23 mission. Let's see, we've got Bill in Lauderdale, understandably checking in from Fort Lauderdale tonight. Let us know where you're watching from. Always good to see where our community is representing here in the chat. Aaron joining us from Jupiter, Florida. We've got Riverside, California, Lebanon, Oregon. course, lots of folks here in the Sunshine State joining us. Got Justin Case from British Columbia. Chris Shane up in Massachusetts. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, this Falcon 9 will be taking a northeasterly trajectory once it does leave the pad. So for folks that are along the east coast of the United States, let us know if you're able to catch a glimpse of that Falcon 9 as it takes flight and makes its climb uphill. Be sure to tag us with whatever photos or video you're able to capture on your social media of choice. You can find us on most of those spots simply at Spaceflight Now. Want to thank Cindy Kirkman for a $10 super chat. Appreciate that support tonight, Cindy. Good to have you with us. Also, thanks to Airplanes on a Stick, one of my favorite handles, the $5 super chat, who says, no better way to end a weekend in Orlando than hanging out with my peeps on Spaceflight Now while enjoying nice dirty vodka martini. Go Spaceflight Now, go SpaceX. Well, at the insistence of my boss, this is a dry commentary for this mission, but hope you're all out in our audience enjoying, whether you're just having some water or tea beside you with this rocket launch, or you're like Airplanes on a Stick and enjoying a nice adult beverage to close out the weekend. If the latter is your beverage of choice, hopefully you're where you're going to be for the night, not having to drive. But if you do have to get behind the wheel at some point, remember to drive sober or have a designated driver for you. Wizard of Frobos with a $5 super chat, asking how many Starshield spy satellites in this payload. 0 Starshield satellites on this mission that we know of. This payload consists of 27 Starlink satellites. Unclear when the next batch of Starshield satellites will be heading into low Earth orbit. There have already been a nice handful of Starshield missions on behalf of the National Reconnaissance Office that launched earlier this year. Not to say that there won't be more in the back end. I believe the NRO has at least one more that was on their manifest for 2025, if not more than one. Just taking a look at the NRO's log of launches. The last one for the spy agency, as we're T-minus 1 hour and counting on this Falcon 9 launch, that was NROL 145, which lifted off from Vandenberg on April 19th of this year. The NRO does list NROL 48 as part of its proliferated architecture missions that are on the docket for 2025, as well as NROL 190. NROL 192 actually launched on April 12th. So we have at least one more batch of Starshield satellites that's going to be heading up into low Earth orbit at some point this year, but don't have a date for you at this point in time. That'll be announced by the NRO sometime in the future. Also want to thank Bill in Lauderdale for a $5 super chat, one of our channel members, who says, for the mods, thank you for all you do. And yes, we do have wonderful moderators here on YouTube, so appreciate all of their hard work. And you can make things just that much easier for Callistia and Astro Joe tonight and any of the other mods who cruise on in during the countdown by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond appropriately, that you refrain from using all caps when you type whatever comment or query you have to add to the conversation. We also ask that you refrain from delving into overt politics and religion in the chat, and also that you treat others with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. Now, currently T-minus 57 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, as SpaceX continues to move towards the current T0 of 1:58 a.m. Eastern. With that being the case, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the countdown timeline, the sequence of events that we're looking forward to ahead of a good launch of the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. Of course, things will start with the go-ahead for the beginning of prop load. Broadly speaking, this will happen at T-minus 38 minutes. Once the go-ahead is given, fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket begins at T-minus 35 minutes and counting, with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. And at the same time, liquid oxygen will begin flowing on board the vehicle's first stage. Half an hour before flight, the cryogenic helium load begins on the booster stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes thereafter. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes, second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. And T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill-down process will get underway. It's when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage LOX load. We see this manifest as the so-called big vent that begins at pad 40 at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, lasting just a hair under 4 minutes, setting the stage for second stage LOX load to begin at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster will get underway at T-minus 7 minutes. That's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before takeoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. It starts with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, reclines a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. 2 minutes out, same is true on the second stage, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, and there's not an issue with the flight termination system, the command will be given for the hold-down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting that liftoff at 1:58 a.m. Eastern, 05:58 UTC, just about 54.5 minutes from now. Now T-minus 45 minutes and counting. SpaceX continues to press towards a T0 liftoff time for this Falcon 9 rocket at 1:58 a.m. Eastern. Again, they do have backup opportunities that last until 5:47 a.m. if needed, as long as tanking of the vehicle has not begun. The Falcon 9 first stage booster that is flying today's mission is, in fact, one of the frequent flyers for SpaceX. Taking a look at the top 5, which of course is more than 5 on this list now that we have a still 3-way tie for 5th spot, 21 missions apiece. But looking at Falcon Booster 1069, which is going to be making its 25th trip to space and back when it does launch in support of this mission. We'll talk more about its flight history as we get closer to T0. But predominantly, this booster has been used for Starlink missions, as is the case once again tonight. Here's a look at the bar chart for the Falcon family of rockets, representing where SpaceX currently stands on the year so far. 75 missions, looking for that elusive 76th tonight. Again, for those who are just joining us and were not with us for the last launch attempt of this rocket, SpaceX did run into a snag with a reportedly weak signal connected to the flight termination system on the rocket. That resulted in a scrub of the mission. SpaceX launch director didn't note whether that was in relation to the FTS on the booster or the upper stage. But presumably they've got that issue fixed now that they're back at the pad and going to make another run at it. The liftoff currently set for just about 42.5 minutes from now. And coming up in just about 4.5 minutes is when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load if they haven't already done so. SpaceX does this readiness poll electronically, so if they are in a good position to do that, they can do it early. And of course, the fuel load process will begin at T-minus 35 minutes once the green light is given. Now just about 40 minutes, 40 seconds and counting ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. Talking about the payload that's on board as we await for the start of fueling. 27 Starlink satellites are nestled within the payload fairings at the top of the Falcon 9 stack. This will be SpaceX's 57th Starlink mission of the year so far, the 56th dedicated Starlink flight. SpaceX has been flying the V2 Mini optimized version of these Starlink satellites, with those considerably lighter as compared to the previous versions of the V2 Minis, as you can see with the satellite weight difference there on the screen. Once deployed and in their on-orbit configuration, they are 100 feet or 30 meters in length with their solar panels fully unfurled. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Manufactured in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. Now T-minus 38 minutes and counting. At this point, the SpaceX launch director should have made the call on the start of prop load tonight. Assuming the T0 of 1:58 a.m. Eastern has not changed. Tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket is set to begin now less than 3 minutes. Now T-minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, assuming that SpaceX is continuing to target a T0 liftoff of its Falcon 9 rocket at 1:58 a.m. Eastern, 05:58 UTC, the fueling process is now underway. Of course, SpaceX has long since stopped putting out public notice that it has begun fueling for its Falcon 9 rocket when it comes to these routine Starlink missions, so we rely on visual cues of the fueling process to confirm that tanking has in fact begun. What we're looking for, a little bit of heat distortion tonight with the Falcon 9 rocket. You may be thinking to yourself that the proportions of the second stage compared to the booster are way off, and again, that's just a factor of the heat and humidity tonight that we have no control over, so be that what it is. We're still looking at the same part of the Falcon 9 rocket that is just beneath the X in SpaceX, right where you see that point of gradient shift. Start to see a little bit of a frost line form and some vapor in that part of the rocket, as well as SpaceX loads a super cold densified liquid oxygen onto the LOX tank in the booster. Usually takes a couple minutes or a few minutes for that really to be evident. So within the next... Actually, it does look like we're starting to see that vapor. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that now, which is good news. Means once again SpaceX is tanking this Falcon 9 rocket in preparation for a launch at 1:58 a.m. Eastern, 05:58 UTC. And because SpaceX uses that densified liquid oxygen, they employ what's known as a load and go style of fueling its launch vehicles. In essence, once the tanking has begun, as is the case tonight, they no longer have the opportunity to play with any of the remaining time in the launch window. Just under half an hour to the planned launch time for this Falcon 9 rocket. For those of you who may just be joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 10-23 mission, set to lift off on a Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Our thanks to the more than 1,300 of you who are watching with us live at this point in the early hours of Monday, June 23rd here on the East Coast. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing this stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we cruise on to the final 29 minutes of the count. Falcon 9 first stage booster that is set to fly this mission, tail number B1069 in the SpaceX fleet, last flew 30 days ago on the Starlink 12-22 mission. Before we go ahead and see its next trip to space and back, hopefully everything will progress smoothly tonight. Let's go ahead and walk back through memory lane with the flight history for B1069. It began as a number of boosters have in the past with the launch of a Dragon spacecraft. This was the Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-24 mission to the International Space Station. It was back on December 21st of 2021, lifting off from Pad 39A. That was followed up by the first Starlink flight for this booster, Starlink 4-23 on August 28th. Following that up with flight number 3, the launch of Eutelsat's Hotbird 13F satellite on October 15th of 2022. Then a batch of internet satellites for the OneWeb constellation. This was the 15th such batch of satellites, which were manufactured not too far from here at the Airbus OneWeb satellite manufacturing facility on Merritt Island, located just down the road from the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. For those who are driving by the area headed to the Visitor Complex in the future, right across the road from Blue Origin's campus as well. Another batch of Starlink satellites followed that up with Starlink 5-3 on February 2nd of 2023. Then a pair of satellites, numbers 18 and 19, on behalf of one of SpaceX's oldest customers, SES, based in Luxembourg. That flight lifted off on March 17th of 2023. And then, for those who were with us last go-around will recall, this is when we get into the run of Starlink missions from here to the present. You had Starlink 5-6 on May 4th of 2023, 5-12 on June 23rd, 6-9 on August 11th, 6-19 on September 30th, 6-28 on November 18th, 6-36 on December 29th. Coming into last year, 6-39 on February 25th, 6-47 on April 5th, 6-57 on May 6th, 10-1 on June 8th, 10-9 on July 27th, 8-10 on August 31st, 10-8 on October 26th, 6-66 on November 21st. Bringing into this year with Starlink 12-3 on February 4th, 12-21 on March 13th, 6-74 on April 25th, and most recently we had Starlink 12-22 on May 24th. And if all goes well, in just about 25 and a half minutes, we'll have Starlink 10-23 to add to the mix. just a hair under 24.5 minutes left on the countdown tonight. At this point, SpaceX is now loading cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's second stage. It began the same on the booster stage at about the 30-minute mark. As we are awaiting the start of the chill down and the thermal conditioning of the feed lines ahead of second stage LOX load, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the launch timeline for this mission, the nominal sequence of events for a good flight of this particular Falcon 9 rocket. Following a liftoff at 1:58 a.m. Eastern, the rocket will throttle down as it passes through max Q, which is the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. It'll throttle its engines back up as it continues to travel faster than the speed of sound. A little before the 2-minute mark, SpaceX will start thermal conditioning on the Merlin vacuum engine on the vehicle's second stage. We'll have 3 events in rapid succession. First stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, will happen at T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine at T plus 2 minutes and 35 seconds. That'll be followed up by the deployment of the payload fairings at the top of the rocket stack just before the 3-minute mark. About 3 minutes after that will be the first stage entry ignition burn, lasting a little less than 30 seconds in total. That'll use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster, slowing the vehicle down and putting it in position to start the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes and 52 seconds. Looking for a touchdown on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas today. That would represent the 114th landing with a good touchdown at just about T plus 8 minutes and 16 seconds after liftoff. That'll be followed by SECO-1, or second stage engine cutoff, at T plus 8 minutes and 37 seconds, putting the upper stage on a coast phase until T plus 54 minutes and 55 seconds, when there will be a roughly 2-second burn of that upper stage engine, circularizing the orbit, setting up the Starlink satellites to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 19 seconds post-liftoff. And there you see the start of the so-called big vent. This is a good visual indication that the launch is proceeding on time as expected. This thermal conditioning will last until T minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds, setting up for a second stage LOX load to begin at the 16-minute mark. With just a minute remaining now on this big event, want to thank Bill in Lauderdale once again for a $5 super chat. Giving some more love to our moderators here. And a big thanks, yes, to Callistia Lee and to Astro Joe for helping us out at this early hour. As a reminder, if you haven't already subscribed to Spaceflight now is a great time to do that. Be sure to turn on notifications, ring that bell icon, and that way you won't be left in the lurch when we start new live stream broadcasts or upload new videos to the channel. And of course, be sure to set your alarms for this morning at 5:54 a.m. Eastern, which will be the start of our next broadcast in support of the launch of the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. That'll be sending up the second batch of Kuiper satellites into low Earth orbit. As you can see, the big vent has wrapped up and second stage locked, so it is beginning in the next few seconds. This pre-dawn launch of a Falcon 9 rocket will be the company's 493rd to date and the 76th Falcon 9 launch of 2025 so far. As we're getting ready to see this Falcon 9 fly in just about 15 minutes, let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Falcon 9 rocket, which stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the booster stage. Again, today's booster is tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet, looking to make its 25th trip to space and back. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage of the rocket. This is a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere. Tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until the point of separation. Speaking of that upper stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a modified Merlin engine, referred to as a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVac engine. Equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. This engine produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. It will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 27 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the second stage also burns liquid oxygen and RP-1. And following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, a little more than an hour and 4 minutes into the mission, this upper stage will perform one final burn called the deorbit burn, driving this part of the rocket back into the atmosphere where it's designed to burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, currently encapsulating the 27 Starlink satellites. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material, stand at 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. Following their atmospheric reentry, they will splash down in the water of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. They will then be recovered by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels, brought back through Port Canaveral, and then turn around for refurbishment for future missions. A little less than 12 minutes to go now on this Falcon 9 rocket, as we're preparing to see the Starlink 10-23 mission hopefully take flight from Pad 40. Coming up on 10.5 minutes before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Taking a peek at our live chat, I want to give a big thank you to Glenn and Luis Masser for a very generous $50 super chat. Really appreciate that, Glenn and Luis. Thank you so much for supporting us at that level. It's very much appreciated. With a simple message of good morning. A good morning to you. We're now currently T-minus 8 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. As we're preparing to see this Falcon 9 rocket take flight, let's go ahead and talk about where exactly it's going to be going once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket lifting off from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Going to be taking a northeasterly trajectory, heading up along the east coast of the United States. So for folks that are in the area of northeast Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and on up north, hopefully you've got some clear skies out to your east. And if you are able to capture some views of this Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent, be sure to tag us on social media. We are simply at Spaceflight now on Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and X. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet, will aim to touch down on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. This will be the 114th good landing for this booster, or for this drone ship, if all goes well. This would also represent the 465th booster landing to date. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece, as is the case with its payload fairings. SpaceX doesn't often talk about its fairing halves, but most recent mention of its flight leader was a fairing half that had flown for a 30th time. Once down in the water, they'll be brought aboard one of these recovery vessels, brought through the port and onto the Hangar X site, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Just under 7 minutes to go. At this point, the engine chill, the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster, is underway. Less than 6 minutes to go. The first stage kerosene tank should be full. Coming up in about 30-ish seconds, we should also be getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket and mission audio coming in from SpaceX as well.
I think for strong back retract.
And as you just heard, they're pressurizing for the start of the retraction of the strong back. Visually, we'll see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline away from the Falcon 9 rocket. A little bit of housekeeping at this point in the countdown as well. You'll notice our clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen is ahead of what's coming in from the SpaceX feed. Reason being, our clock is in real time, and what's coming in from SpaceX is on a slight delay. So as long as we have tracking views of the rocket, we'll be making those callouts based off of real-time events. Three minutes and counting. The first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Good confirmation of stage 1 LOX load. Coming up on the conclusion of second stage here in about 10 seconds in real time. T-minus 2 minutes and counting. We're seeing now live are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX removes the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
Again, the SpaceX feed coming in on about a 20-second delay, so that's why those callouts are coming so far behind the real-time events. Unfortunately, not a whole lot we can do about that lag.
Ground gas closeouts.
T-minus 1 minute and counting. .30 seconds and counting.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
.20 seconds.
Launch director, go for launch.
Confirmation that we are go for launch now 12 seconds out in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-23 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. Now a little more than a minute into flight. Falcon 9 throttling back as it passes through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. The rocket is traveling faster than the speed of sound, so we're about a minute and a half into the flight. Shortly, SpaceX will start the thermal conditioning on the vehicle's second stage. Coming up on a series of events in fairly rapid succession here in real time. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. Just a little more than 2.5 minutes into flight. About 20 seconds to MECO. Ten seconds to MECO. Main engine cutoff. Stage separation. And we should have second stage engine start. There you go. Coming up on fairing separation in about 10 seconds.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
You can see the payload fairings have deployed in real time. Again, the SpaceX feed coming in on about a 23-second delay, so that's why the onboard camera events are so far behind what we're seeing in real time tonight. Not a whole lot we can do about that, unfortunately.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Good views of those 27 Starlink satellites on the top of the Falcon 9 second stage. Coming up, our next milestone here will be the start of the entry burn, where SpaceX will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster to begin to dramatically slow that vehicle down.
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
Booster starting to slow down a little bit now. It looks like it's going to top off at 119 kilometers in altitude with tonight's flight. Nope, 120. Stand corrected. Now beginning to make its descent towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Now 5 minutes into the flight in real time. Given the clarity that we have with viewing tonight, there's a chance that we might be able to catch the entry burn with our tracking camera here at the press site. Not a guarantee that we'll be able to see it, but I know Adam will be doing his level best to try to bring that into focus for us. So if we are able to capture ground level views of that event, we'll of course bring those to you. That entry burn is set to begin in just about 10 seconds from now in real time. Should have start of entry burn now. A little tricky to pinpoint the landing burn. I believe that's the Merlin vacuum engine, that dot that just flashed across the screen. Entry burn is now wrapped up in real time.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And again, we're just now starting to see the entry burn from the onboard cameras because of the notable difference in broadcast time coming from SpaceX.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Flight termination system on the booster stage has been saved, as you just heard. Next milestone coming up will be the start of the landing burn, which is set to begin in now less than a minute based off of the SpaceX timeline.
Stage 1 transonic.
Booster traveling below the speed of sound, now approaching the start of the landing burn. Coming up in about 10-ish seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And B-1069 completing its 25th trip to space and back.
MVAC shut down.
And with that good call for MVAC shutdown, presumably the upper stage entered into a nominal parking orbit where it will coast until T plus 54 minutes and 55 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn to circularize the orbit. And then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 19 seconds post liftoff. As we get our launch replays ready for you, want to check into our live chat here for just a moment. Welcome back, channel member Janine De La Sera, joining us back with membership at the pad leader level. Good to see you again, Janine. United Nations Space Command marking 22 months with us as a member at the mission specialist level, who says, got a good view from Fort Myers, Florida with my Celestron telescope. Love the northeasterly launches. And Janine also with a $5 super chat who says, hello. Great job as always. Hello, everyone. Hello, Janine. Glad to have you with us tonight. As those replays are ready, let's check in with our mission stats now as they currently stand with a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. That marked the 25th flight now in the books for B-1069. This was SpaceX's 493rd Falcon 9 launch to date, the 76th of the year so far. This was SpaceX's 431st Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the company's 148th orbital launch within the last 365 days. The 260th orbital flight for SpaceX from Pad 40, and the 315th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Taking a look at the bar chart representation of the Falcon family of rockets, here's where we currently stand. Moving on to some recovery stats. Tonight's flight was the 114th good landing on the drone ship Shortfall of Gravitas. That marked SpaceX's 376th drone ship landing and the 465th overall booster landing for SpaceX to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 52nd orbital flight from the Sunshine State, the 80th launch from U.S. soil, the 88th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 135th orbital launch attempt around the globe. There have been 3 launch mishaps on the year so far, and here is where our pie chart currently stands. Still waiting for wind conditions to improve for the next flight from down in New Zealand with Rocket Lab. So TBD on when that will add to the tally, but our next orbital launch Our next orbital launch coming up here in just a matter of hours, as United Launch Alliance is looking to send up the second batch of operational satellites on behalf of Amazon and its Project Kuiper internet constellation. Looking for a liftoff from Space Launch Complex 41 coming up at 6:54 a.m. Eastern, 10:54 UTC for those of you around the world. So be sure to join us back here an hour before liftoff for a dedicated live stream on that mission coming up later this morning. And then later on this afternoon, we've got one more Falcon 9 launch for you, this time from the West Coast. A batch of 70 payloads that are looking to take flight as part of the Transporter 14 mission, as part of SpaceX's dedicated rideshare transport service. And taking a look now at our replays as we have those ready, we'll start with our fixed view here at the press site. Moving on to the wide camera. Moving on to the turn basin view. Should have a nice reflection in this one. And finally wrapping up with the tracker shot from here at the press site. And that'll go ahead and wrap things up for us tonight with the Starlink 10-23 mission. Again, we'll be back in action with a dedicated stream for the Atlas V launch coming up a little bit later this morning. Want to thank our moderators in the live chat. See Aussie Space Girl joined us. Good to see you, Stephanie, as well as Callistia Lee and Astro Joe. Appreciate all of you for helping out tonight. Also thanks to Cumulus Granatus, one of our channel members, for helping out with answering folks' questions and offering some good information about this mission to the live chat. Thanks to our photography team of Adam and John helping out as well, getting things set up here, and John also running the technical operations of the broadcast alongside our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. We'll have the full team out in force in support of the launch of the Atlas V later on this morning, so go ahead and follow the fellas on X if you haven't already so you can keep up with their photography work. Big thanks to our member community here on YouTube as well as on our website, spaceflightnow.com, who help make these live launch opportunities possible. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from tonight. We enjoy bringing these launches to you live, and we hope to see you back a little bit later on this morning with the second launch of an Atlas V so far this year, with the second operational batch of Kuiper satellites on board. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We'll see you very soon, my friends, and until then, bye-bye.